Hey, welcome back. In this video, we're going to cover parameters, return values, and we're going to talk about scopes. And so let's go ahead and start looking at some code. I've already copied my template and I've got my title set. I don't need this index.html page anymore, and I've got us all set up here on the right-hand side. So let's start off by parameters. Parameters are data that you're passing into functions. So as an example, last time we created that greet function, but it was just generic. But let's go ahead and this time we're going to pass in a name into our greet function. And we're going to log, and we'll just make this simple, hello. And then I'm going to also log the name. And in future videos, we'll take care of this. We'll learn how to format that string a little bit better using string templates or string literals. For now, this is perfect. We're going to console log out hello and then name. To call that function, I can call greet, but now I want to feed it a name. So let's say hello Bob. I'm going to refresh our page over here and you can see it says hello Bob. And if I want, I could make this a little more. We can say exclamation point here on the very end. Hello Bob, and it's got this goofy space. But again, like I said, we'll talk about string literals and formatting strings in future videos. The new part here is I'm passing data in to my function. So I could use this same function to greet another person. If I refresh my page, I'm going to get hello Bob, hello Alice. And that makes functions a little bit more reusable, right? So I can have a function that does a certain behavior or a certain thing, and I can reuse it. So as an example, what if I create an add function that takes two numbers, A and B, and what we're going to do is we're going to console log A, we'll put plus, B equals A plus B. And again, formatting the string, it's not the greatest at this time, but we're okay with this. So I can say add 1 and 3. And let's see what I get over here. And you can see a 1 plus 3 is equal to 4. And I can reuse this function now. So now it's reusable. Maybe I want to add two different numbers, 11 and 12. I refresh the page, and 11 plus 12 is 23. So this is perfect. But this also leads into our next topic, which is return types. Currently, this add function doesn't return the sum, it just logs it out so we can see it. But what if maybe I create a subtract function, takes an A and a B, but instead of console logging it out, I want to return the difference. So maybe I'm going to compute the difference first. So the diff is A minus B. I certainly could log it out just like I did before. So I can log diff, and we'll just do diff like that. But what I can also do is return that value, return diff. When I call subtract, I don't just want to feed it two numbers. Of course, I want to do that. But I also, if I hover over this, you can see that it returns a number. So I want to get that value, that return value. So I'm going to let the result equal to whatever the subtract function returns. And then out here, let's go ahead and console log result. So the difference between the add and subtract function is add doesn't return anything, but subtract, I'm returning the actual value so I can use it outside of the function. And if I refresh my page and run this, you can see that inside the function, I'm logging this diff and it's 3. And then I return the value of 3, but then I log it outside the function. When we start talking about inside the function, outside the function, what we're really talking about are scopes. The variable scopes. So let's just take a moment and dive into scopes a little bit. So outside of everything, I have what's called global scope. So let me create a global var, call it global underscore var. I'm going to set it as a string value that's just going to be global. And right here, because it's globally accessible, I should be able to access this global var and we'll echo it out. So if I refresh my page, I can see global. And then for the purposes of this discussion for scopes, let's create another function. And we're just going to say this is a func. It's called func. And I'm not going to have any parameters in here. But inside this func function, I'm going to create a func var. And we're going to set its value to a string called func. Inside of the function, let's go ahead and see if I can log, first of all, the global variable. Can I log it? And then can I log the func variable? And then once I've declared this function, obviously I have to call it. So I'm going to call func. And then I also want to see what happens if I can access this func var outside. So here I'm going to console log func var. We'll see what happens to our code. So I'm going to refresh this and run this. You can see I get the initial global. That's from my initial line right here on line 34. Then I get global again, and that's from inside the function. So inside the function, I can access this global var. And then I get the func var inside of the function. I can access that. But outside, you can see I'm getting this reference error. Func var is not defined on line 43, which is right here. This indicates that this variable, func var, that's declared inside of the function has scope that's inside the function. So it's got function scope. This variable that's declared in the global scope has global scope. So let's leave this all like this, and let's go ahead down here and we're going to create an if statement. And let's say 1 plus 3 is that greater than 2, just to have some kind of condition in there. And that's going to be obviously true. That's 4. So I'm going to come in here. Let's create a block var. So I'm in this code block like that, and we're going to console log the global var. Let's see if we can access it. We're going to console log the block var, and just to see if we can access it, we're going to console log func var. Now I'm going to refresh, and we're going to get a couple of things happen. So let me refresh first. I'm not going to get past this error. So right here on line 43, which is right here, JavaScript is having an error. And when JavaScript has an error, everything after that, it doesn't execute. And this isn't a good thing. And we'll learn ways to handle errors later on. But for now, I'm going to comment this line of code out so we can get past that line. I'm going to refresh it. You can see I'm getting global func. Here's global from line 47, which is right here. It has access to the global var, which is what we expect. It also is printing out the block var. So it has access to its own variable that's inside of its block, its code block here. And then I get another error because func var is not defined because it's not defined inside the scope of this code block. So I'm going to have to comment that out if I want to get past that. So far we've talked about global scope up here. We've talked about function scope. This is called block scope. And there's one more called lexical scope that I'm not going to get into right now because it takes a little bit more advanced knowledge of functions for us to understand that, but we're going to get to that eventually. But I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it here in this video. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to introduce the concept of a function as a variable, and we're going to start to see this concept of callbacks, which are very important in JavaScript. So we'll see you next time.